Before you get them horns up, here is a disclaimer. This episode was recorded on the 31st of December 2018 and is only reaching your ears now because of, well, reasons. The podcast will resume a regular schedule soon. Till then, get ready, and here we go.
It's time to get them horns up. I'm Animesh, and Peter, where are you, man?
So I'm in the westernmost part of India, in Goa, actually.
Dude, the westernmost part of India is Gujarat.
Okay, fair enough. I'm in the party capital of India.
And are you partying?
Far from it, my friend, far from it. I'm actually taking it easy, sipping on them cold beers, catching up on all the music that I missed out on this year. And it's been so much music, man.
Yeah, man, it has. And coincidentally, or actually not coincidentally, literally, we are recording this on the last day of 2018. That's 365 days we are never getting back. How has the year been for you, man?
Music front, it's been great. I mean, there's been so many albums. I mean, I've lost track of the number of promos I've got this year, and from so many different places. It's been great to hear from bands from places like Macedonia and stuff like that, where I really thought I'd ever listen to metal from. But you've also otherwise had a lot of big bands, and I've had the opportunity to also interview quite a few bands this year. So I'm very grateful for that.
Anything that really stood out? Dream come true?
Dream come true, I not much, but at least I'm glad I got to do interview again. Marai from the Japanese progressive avant-grande band, we may want to call them Psy. And see, I mean, it was great to interview him, especially since in the lead up to the album, he kept saying that, everyone's going to hate it. All the critics are going to hate it. I've written this album only for me. So once I heard the album, I was kind of surprised because I really enjoyed it and I thought I was missing something. So, going into the interview, I really wanted to kind of figure out why. And on this album, they've actually kind of taken a whole different direction where they're singing in Japanese.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give too much about that interview. So I'll definitely put a link in our show notes for it. But yeah, man, it's been a lot of labels have had a great year. I mean, 20 Bucks been, at least last time we spoke about Transcending Obscurity also from in Bombay. They've had a great year. Kunal Choksi put up a list and I realized he's put out more than 20 international albums this year, which is quite admirable in this day and age of where everyone's looking mainly into downloads and streaming. What about you, Animesh? Tell me about what your year's been like.
My year on the musical front, well, I didn't listen to as much music as I would have hoped to. I think that's changing after the podcast, definitely. But one really cool thing happened for me this year musically, and that is with my band, the Riot Peddlers. With my band, I say the band that I play for, the Riot Peddlers. We did our first ever out of India tour. That was a big highlight for me. I mean, who would have ever thunk that a hardcore punk band from India, from Bombay, who talk about the daily travails of Indian life, of life that they experience back here, would be booked and then get to perform in Singapore, in Kuala Lumpur, in I forgot the other town's name, in Malaysia. It was awesome just to see that kind of. It's awesome because you hear about the brotherhood of music and you hear about the brotherhood of metal, punk, all these scenes. But it's truly when you go into another land where you're not expecting it and you see it and you experience it there, that you see that it's not just fiction, it is fact.
We met around the time you had got one of those emails And this is, of course, way before we ever thought we'd do a podcast together. And I still remember your reaction saying, "Oh, by the way, we just got an email to play a gig here." And I was like, "Wow, that's cool. I didn't know you guys were active."
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, man, we've been active fairly okay. I mean, how many times do you actually get to book or actually get to see, or how many times do you actually book punk rock band here in Bombay or anywhere here in India? I know of only two or three promoters who do it willingly.
And of course, venues have also been a major worry in the past year, at least here in Bombay. Whereas I feel jealous when I look at all the other venues opening up in other parts of the country. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but
We don't get booked here in India, man, and that's absolutely fine. Our music isn't for most people, and that I agree with. But just to see the kind of reception that we got outside of India, it was heartening.
right, and we definitely need to chat more about this on a future episode because I really want to pick your brain as to just the punk scene and the hardcore scene around
Yeah,
Asia.
we
And
should
we
definitely get like Arun and Ashwin, maybe I don't know who else we can, but get them together and do like a punk scene special or something of that sort.
and we should definitely look at also the scene across in Asia because every day, I mean, scenes like Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, there's so many bands. I don't think we'll have enough. We'll spend another 2020 and we'll still be hearing the bands that have released in the last few years itself. So there's so much good music coming out of this region.
Definitely. All right, so here's the plan for episode two. I think it's time to look back, reminisce a bit about the year gone by. Sounds like a plan?
Oh, yeah, let's get this started.
All right, so let's begin with our favorite albums from 2018. We're only listing out five each, and they're all limited to, as such, the metal umbrella genre. I want to reveal our picks one by one. Is that okay with you?
Oh yeah, let's do that because
Y-
I realized while we were prepping up for this, we've done it completely differently. But that's the best part about doing a top picks like this.
Yep. What you mean by doing it completely differently is that you have gone out and done it alphabetically, while I have actually put my neck out there and have numbered my list. So I'll be giving you a number five, number four, number three, number two, downright to my top album of the year. I'm
And,
just putting my
and
neck out a bit.
and the only reason I did that is because I feel as just somebody who listens and enjoys music and not I can't really it's a more subjective thing for me as opposed to objectively looking at it as a musician or the technicality and stuff like that. So I'm just putting out my top albums, what I've listened to, of course, given my limited time. So these are the top five albums alphabetically that I listen to the most this year.
All right. Mine is not, yeah, I agree with you. It is a subjective list. I may not have the same ranking tomorrow as I do right now, but yeah, it remains a subjective list too. Disclaimers aside, let's begin. Peter, what's on your list? First album.
Okay, so starting with the alphabet A, Alkaloid Liquid Anatomy. For me, I just title it a progressive masterpiece. And for anybody who has any doubt why this album is one of my top albums of the year, you just need to listen to the album closer, Rise of the Self-Alloys.
That's a 18-minute long track.
Oh yeah, and it just encompasses everything in the album. It's such a beautiful way to end the album. Each of the musicians are so technically proficient. I don't need to go into that really, but I think you also happened to listen to the album. What did you think of
Yes,
it?
I did. It was your word itself that put me onto that album, and I must say it's beautifully done. It is a masterpiece. I completely agree with you on that. What I really liked about it is how organic all of it seemed to be. I'm sure it must have been really worked on, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels very in the moment. And the riffs and how they meld into each other, and the vocalization, the styling of of the vocals, there's just something for everyone on that album.
Oh yeah, and when you compare it to most of the other tech or prog albums that been released this year, it's the most organic sounding to me. And it seems very seamless. Most of the other stuff seems very sterile, and I think that's just primarily the production call they've taken on it. This is one of the top albums for me, especially because I listened to them in the past, and the jump that they've made musically is unbelievable, and I can't imagine what their next album is going to be like, really. So my first pick was Alkaloid Liquid Anatomy. What was yours?
All right. So coming in at number 5 on my list is Wolftooth's self-titled debut, Wolftooth. The album arrived quite early in the year, the first week of Jan 2018, and as a result, it's been on my playlist for quite some time. This is a band that hails from Richmond, Indiana, and they play a branch of heavy metal that's similar to bands like The Sword or Clutch or Dawnbringer, maybe our very own Bever C and the likes. So yeah, it does seem like a tribute of sorts to the 1970s and 80s, but it's not out and out Sabbath or Rainbow Worship, and that's why I really enjoyed this album. Collection of 8 tracks that showcase original super strong songwriting. The guitars have a lot of fuzz on them. The songs have earworm melodies and hooks. The lyrics tread fantastical stories or personal quips. It's an album that's been my soundtrack companion on long commutes several times in the year. Warm, smooth, and it's become one of the most repeated albums for me in 2018. Wolftooth's self-titled debut, Wolftooth.
Okay,
Have you
this
heard that
is
one out?
no, I haven't,
Cool.
and
So I'll share
this
that one with you.
sounds and this definitely sounds like something I would enjoy and something up my alley.
All right. So that was mine. What's next on yours?
All right, and next for me is a Mumbai Pune band called Dirge, and they released their album a
I thought
couple
it
of
was
months.
Tirge. That's a Mumbai Pune joke for you.
Yeah. So, and their debut album, Ah Pooch, I think I'm saying it, or Ah Punch, whatever. I'm not getting into the semantics of it. But so their album is, if anyone has heard of Dirge in the past, they're a doom metal band. But
Mm-hmm.
what's unique about their album, unlike most doom metal acts, or at least the ones I've heard so far, their whole album was inspired by Mayan and Aztec mythology. And if you look at most of the doom metal bands, at least some of my favorites, they've channeled the whole New Orleans sludge sound. And it's
Uh-huh.
like taken it to the next level, really. And one of the great things they've got is great production on it compared to most of the Indian acts. So they really stand out for me, and that's why they're the only Indian act on my list. And again, Dirge, I saw them live also during their album release gig, as heavy live as they are on CD. Have you had a chance to check
I've
them
heard
out?
only one track of that entire album, and yeah, it's been on my list of things to getting around and listening to, but I haven't done that due diligence with them. But yeah, definitely going to check
Yeah,
them out.
yeah. So that was Dirge from Mumbai, Pune. My second pick. What's yours, Animesh?
Okay, so number 4 on my list is something that I'm going to get a lot of flack for from a bunch of people who identify as metal lifers. It's Def Haven's Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. It's largely to do with Def Haven's sound. It remains a contemporary take on the sound that defines black metal. And this time around, on what is the band's third album, that sound has been used and crafted to write songs that are, if I were to use just one word to describe them, it would be beautiful. I found the album to be more mellow and chill than the previous 2 albums by the Californian band, and dare say I think it's their most mature effort yet. There's some impeccable songwriting, and the band finally seems to be extremely comfortable with their own voice and identity. But I think this becomes the album that, or this became the album that finally ended the debate of whether Death Haven is metal or not. It's definitely not black metal, even though it uses similar techniques. You can call it black gaze, call it shoegaze, post metal, dream metal, whatever you like. But it is a metal album, and that's because it is impeccably good. It pushes boundaries. It's technically sound, and it's as intense or heavy as any of the other metal albums you would have ever heard this year. What do you think? Have you checked out Def Haven, and what are your thoughts on the entire debate that's around this band and this kind of sound?
But one thing I must add to what you said is no matter whether they are metal or not, they've spawned so many clones. I mean, that Sunbather album of theirs spawned so many
Completely.
that if they had to remake that album, I mean, you can't expect them to remake that album at all. But I did check out their latest album. Uh, I did enjoy it in bits. Not something that I would kind of go back to on a regular basis. But I mean, when it comes to the debate of whether they are metal or not, of course they are metal. I mean, just forget just their music, look at the influence they've had on their sound, and just look at the entire show that they put on.
Yeah, completely. So that was Def Haven's Ordinary Corrupt Human Love, which comes in at number 4 on my list. What's next on your list?
Similar to you, I also listen to a bit of black metal, and this one is on Transcending Obscurity. This was Gaera, Unsettling Whispers. Now,
Okay.
this band is from Portugal. They put on the whole hooded look act. They've got an entire, complete, mysterious look, so you have no idea who the members are.
Hmm.
And for me, the first time I listened to the album, it was a really unsettling experience. And
Okay.
it haunted me so much that I had to go back to that album and just repeatedly listen to it. And it probably is the entire atmosphere I listened to it in, because I listened to it during the rainy season where it was kind of dark, heavy rains, and it just kind of went along with the entire atmosphere I was in, the music. Easily, I've put it as one of the best metal albums I've heard this year. What do you think, Animesh?
I haven't heard this one,
Okay.
but considering it's black metal and considering it's, I'm guessing it's old school traditional black metal in terms of in terms of your description of it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like,
Yeah, I mean, this again, this is probably, if I want to term it, the third wave of, or the fourth wave of black metal. I mean, it does have nods to the second wave of black metal,
mm-hmm.
but these guys have kind of created their own sound. And there's something about the Portuguese black metal scene. They've got something going on of their own. So, yeah, which I feel in the next couple of years is going to kind of explode and probably be remembered as the Norwegian black metal scene.
Wow, that influential.
Yeah, it could be. And that here's me looking into the crystal ball, if I may.
Okay.
Yeah, so my third pick was Gaira, Unsettling Whispers, some black metal into my picks. What about you, Animesh?
Okay, so number 3 on my list is the mighty mournful congregation.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, the Australian funeral doom band gave us an excellent album this year, released in the first quarter of 2018. The Incubus of Karma was, as expected, a masterpiece. It made the most of a CD recording because it clocks in at around 80 minutes. And
Okay.
once again, just like all their previous works, those minutes are perhaps the best mix of heavy, intimate, and sadness that money can buy. This was a record that took a long time for me to get into, and that's because sometimes, well, I just didn't have the time to spin it from top to bottom. But after doing that once, there have been multiple times when I've reached out and spun the whole thing again. It's almost as if the album was a drug, similar to what you had with Gaera. I needed a fix of this album. It's addictive, and yeah, and you generally don't say that a lot about Funeral Doom. What with it being so slow and a challenge to enjoy in today's overtly digital, fast-paced, distraction-heavy life. But Mournful Congregation are just so talented at their craft that you can let these songs unfurl at their own pace, and pretty soon you're just washed over by the entire album. It's a masterpiece. No two ways about it.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And, if you look into their discography also, these guys have not put out one dud as yet.
Yeah,
So
they haven't.
every time they announce a new album, it just sends. And of course, funeral doom metal is such a niche, and there are very, like, I would say, strong followers of the genre or the subgenre. So I did get a chance. I haven't had a chance to listen to the album more than a couple of times, but the few singles that I heard, really strong stuff. Probably this past year I wasn't in the mood to listen to something like this, but
Hmm.
after your description of it, I'm definitely going to try make some time and check out top to bottom, because you really need to dedicate uh, 80 minutes, put in that complete concentration and listen to the album to really feel it.
Yeah, I agree, man. Funeral doom has never been a genre for the impatient, but you need to just mull over it and get it done once at least so that you can finally enjoy it for what it is. So that was Mournful Congregations, Incubus of Karma. That was number three on my list, which gets into the top twos now. But yeah, not top two for you because you're doing it alphabetically.
The
Yeah.
alphabet A for me, we jump onto. And this is an album I think I listened to the most this year, easily. It's a band called Chemist and their album
Yeah.
Desolate. Oh my god. This this was the crossover between doom metal and classic heavy metal.
Yeah.
It's just something about those riffs, man. You just want to raise them horns up, as cliche as they sound. You can listen to them all loud on your speakers, blast them in your car. This was an album I think everyone kind of caught on, and what a release by 20 buck spin. I mean, easily I've listened to it so many times when it came out. I think this was one of those albums similar to I had an experience like I had to the Maiden albums. I just listened to it almost every day for a couple of weeks. I just had to go back to it because it was so good. And those riffs are so sticky, they just get stuck in your head, man.
Yeah, completely agree with you on the riffs, but what I really didn't enjoy was the vocals. I don't know, somehow that vocal style just doesn't appeal to me all that much. Maybe it's because, again, I'm spending so much time with wolf tooth kind of doom metal bands rather than
Fair,
chemists. Maybe it's that.
fair enough. But so that was my fourth pick, Chemist Desolation. Now let's head to the top twos for you, Animesh.
The next album on my list, number two, is one which has made an appearance on maybe 95% of all such lists. I think it will be in your list. I'm not sure, but we'll see if it is. I'm talking about Yob's Our Raw Heart.
Oh
Now,
man.
what can I say about this album that hasn't already been said? That really was the challenge. So, let me tell you about how I experienced this one. I needed to take a break from work and largely life around June this year, and this became the soundtrack for that phase. The album, the experience, it helps introspection, it helps getting a grip on things, it helps rediscover, it helps clear your mind, it helps. It's almost as if this album was a soundtrack to help meditation. And of course, considering all the circumstances that plagued the band before this release, you can't help but just marvel at how much effort went into writing and releasing Our Raw Heart.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I completely agree with you. I was actually following the updates on the band because they've been one of my favorites for a while. Yeah, man, I'm really glad to see them out with a new album. And I'm really glad to also see the critical acclaim they've got for this album. It's long overdue, if I may say so.
Yeah, very long overdue. So, all
So,
right. So, what's your next album, man?
and to wrap this up, my last, when we come to the alphabet T, is The Armed, Only Love. Now,
Okay.
The Armed are a mysterious band again, where you don't really know who the members are. They're rumored to have members of the band Converge in them. I think the drummer accidentally revealed that he recorded the album. So there's a bit of mystery around that. But otherwise, members' identity aside, this album is a mix of metallic hardcore with electronica. It's like they
Okay.
threw both those elements into a blender with a wall of sound production, and it just smashes everything inside. I mean, one of the things about I enjoyed about the album is there's no way you can predict what's coming next. Every song, I thought, okay, this is what it's going to go like. okay, this is where it's going to go, and it just goes completely the opposite direction. And that's what kept me guessing. I mean, it's like, whoa, what's going to come next? Okay, what's this song next? Wow, what's going on? And that was my entire first couple of listens. And I mean, it's not catchy per se, but for somebody who enjoys the noise genre or
Mm-hmm.
something that's really loud, this will
Uh-huh.
definitely be up your alley.
You know, uh, um, I don't know if this is a right opinion, but at times this feels like a pop record in places. Only thing it's a lot heavier.
Yeah, and they've taken the simple stuff what you normally hear in your pop records, which is the synths and stuff like that, and just turned it up to like 15 on the volume.
Yeah, definitely. And it just completely zigs when you're expecting it to zag, or zags when you're expecting it to zig. And even that album artwork, I remember the one. It's the one with the bald woman, right?
Yeah,
It
yeah,
doesn't look like a metal album at all.
yeah. And that's one of the things that really, I guess, over the years I've learned to appreciate is something which doesn't fit in the stereotype or the template of metal is what I keep going back to, because this is something that'll keep surprising you, and that's why it's on one of the top albums of this year for me. I mean, this was not something you'd expect from a band like The Armed or just in general from metal.
Yeah, it definitely something that's pushing boundaries.
Yeah, I agree with that. Come
All
on,
right.
hit us up with your number one, Animesh.
Okay, I'm going with my gut and emotion on this pick, not my mind. This was the album that I've repeated the most in the year. It's the album that's excited me the most. It's the album that I've showcased a lot to people, both those who listen to this kind of music and those who don't. It's Big Destroyer's Head Cage. Now, it's the sixth full length release from the Virginia based grindcore outfit. And my oh my, was this an album to party along to? We've spoken about this album before, and I have to repeat myself here when I say that I don't understand why this album got so much of the flack it did. Why the hell would you want JR Hull and company to keep remaking Prowler in the Yard or Terrifier when there's so much soundscape left for the band to explore?
Oh yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna repeat myself also. If you want to listen to the same grindcore like it was, just go back listen to Napalm Death or any of the bands that released stuff in the 80s, man, or 90s.
Exactly. Now, this album is also special because it was the first time they're playing with a bassist or they're recording with a bassist. Uh, Bassist is John Jarvis, who's related to the band's drummer, Adam Jarvis. The addition of the bass gives Big Destroyer so much more muscle and strength, and it allows for one more direction that the band can take at any short moment's notice. Of course, all of that sound is backed by some of the most horrifyingly beautiful politically charged lyrics and poetry from the crazy mind of JRAs. For me, that one line, which is, why would God create something so weak only for it to suffer, is perhaps the most memorable lyric this year.
For anybody who's been following Big Destroyer and their discography, you that's one of the things that appeals to most people. The lyrics of JR. So definitely something always to look forward to. Unfortunately, when I bought the CD, it didn't come along with the lyrics. One of the things I still buy CDs for. So I'm just going to like print it out or something and add it to the booklet.
Hmm.
Completely agree with you. It was in my top 10 albums. And when I had to narrow it down to five, I had to kind of edge it out for the other albums. But completely agree with you. Big Destroyer, number one album.
Yeah. With this album, they proved once again why they're rightfully considered the torchbearers of this sound or this subgenre. And just as torchbearers should, they know when it's the time to build and improve rather than recycle and reuse. Mark my words, the next album, whenever it releases, will be even bolder.
Oh yeah, and you can constantly expect something new from them. They're constantly pushing the envelope forward and taking something like grindcore way forward than what you expected.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Peter, that was quite an exercise. Satisfied with your our lists?
Oh yeah, this was quite tough to do. I mean, it took me quite a while to down to. It took me
Narrow
quite
things
a while to
down.
narrow things down to 10, and then from 10 to 5, and especially not knowing what you were going to pick, that made it quite an exercise. But I'm glad we did
Yeah,
it.
we ended up with 10 unique albums, five yours and five mine.
So,
But yeah, but that was what was also great is the fact that most of the albums we've heard, whether
oh
it
yeah,
belongs to your list or to mine, which just goes to show that the cream of the crop really rises to the top.
that's a nice one.
Yeah, that's actually a Macho Man Randy Savage quote. Don't get
Oh,
me started on wrestling.
throwing in those wrestling references.
Ooh, yeah.
Let's make a little segue into gigs that we attended. What are the gigs that you attended? I know you didn't attend too many, but what are the most memorable gigs for the past year for you, Animesh?
So, yes, you are right. I didn't attend a lot of gigs, but my most memorable gig, apart from the whole Riot Peddler South Asia tour, the most memorable gig for me in 2018 as an audience member would be Alcest at the South Bank Centre in London, curated by Robert Smith for a festival called Meltdown. And why this was really memorable is because the venue, it was held in a theater which is like your Tata theater in the NCPA, which requires or which features seating, s-
Okay.
but really good acoustics. It took me to a place where I was like, oh my god, why haven't I been going out to gigs, or going out for more gigs, or just coming out and appreciating music a lot more. So yeah, it became one of the reasons I think internally as to why we ended up doing the podcast too. So yeah, which is why I would think it's definitely one of the most memorable gigs I've experienced.
So coincidentally, because we haven't discussed there, that's why I'm putting the disclaimer out there. Alcest at Bangalore Open Air is tied one of my favorite gigs this year.
Oh shit,
And
you not? Are you fucking shitting me?
yeah, and one of the reasons why it's one of the most memorable gigs for me is it was that entire space that I was in while I was watching them. Bangalore open air, as you can imagine, the black t-shirts and stuff like that, and then you have a band like that. Because if you looked at the lineup, you had Immolation, Overkill, and this was one of the few bands that kind of stood out in terms of from their sound,
Uh
and
huh.
they played right before Immolation and Overkill. So it was
Okay.
that time where you can kind of chill out, if you may, before the heavier acts took over.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it was they played when it was still daylight time. So yeah, and it was just kind of getting into dusk. So yeah, definitely experiencing their music in the outskirts of Bangalore, one of the best experiences I had this year. But contrast to that,
Mm-hmm.
the gig that I really enjoyed was by this brutal death metal band called Stillbirth when they
Okay.
played on their India tour in Bombay above the Habitat. These guys, I mean, they don't at all meet any of the cliches that you have from a genre like or a subgenre like brutal death metal. They play in their beach shorts and they play without t-shirts and they just go at it. I mean, you had their opening bands play before them, but the moment they came on stage, things went to a next level. And these guys don't even their whole I mean their domain name is still Birth Party. So these guys want to have a party on stage. And yeah, man. I mean, I'll definitely. I have a video of the vocalist getting into a mosh pit and stuff like that. So much fun. I mean, definitely one of the 1 hour that I want to go back to this year and just watch a band like them again. So much fun. They don't take themselves too seriously compared to most of the bands in their subgenre, who are focusing more on the gore element and stuff like that. These guys just have a party. Yeah, so much fun.
This completely takes me back to one of the gigs that we played as the Riot Peddlers in Singapore. There was a band called Mucus Mortuary, which
Okay.
I shit you not, same vibe as the one you just described. Out and out, full party, full blast,
Yeah.
and still really good songs.
I
Like it's
think
not
that
just about the party; it's also about all of this happening with really good music.
no, and one of the things I guess when you want to go to a live show, you want to see not the same, or don't want to hear the exact same thing that you hear on the record. Otherwise, you just listen to the record and sit at home. With something
Exactly.
like this, you want to, and I mean, get the audience involved. You know, that's where I feel stuff like the mosh pit and the wall of that kind of gets you really going. So yeah, adds to the whole live concert experience.
All right. So with that, it's a wrap on 2018, and we've relived what the year was like.
Definitely. We're looking forward to what 2019 has to bring, considering how good a year in 2018 was for metal. And we had to like struggle to kind of fit in our top five. Hope you enjoyed that. We'll definitely put a playlist of all of our picks so you can check them out on YouTube later.
Yep. So with that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can find Peter at Trend Crusher. I'm at Asmo Annie. And Horns Up itself has a Twitter ID now. What's the handle, Peter?
It's Horns Up POD, because there's a Horns Up podcast, which is a football podcast, which is not really active, but just look up Horns Up POD on Twitter.
Yes, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and wherever else you listen to your podcasts. So leave a rating, tell us we suck. Come on, I dare you. So that's it. Thanks for listening. Throw them horns up.
Horns Up.